Hey, you guys, welcome back in. This is Sports and Money Pro Football GM. I'm Simon Shortt, here once again to talk to you about the Pittsburgh Steelers. It is now late in May. Everything's starting to really slow down. The Steelers have gone through rookie minicamp. OTAs are going to be starting here after this weekend. And the Steelers are hopefully close to signing or selecting their new general manager for the next, however many years, foreseeable future, hopefully a while. So we'll just kind of wait and see what happens there. In my last video, I talked about the biggest hole the Steelers roster still has, which is edge rusher depth. You can go back and take a look at that video if you want to hear a little bit more about it. But over these next couple videos, I'm just going to go through the current state of the Steelers roster. I'm going to go down a couple position groups per video, hopefully keep these pretty short. Although today we are talking about quarterbacks and offensive line. So if you've watched any of my stuff or listened to my stuff, you know I can go for a while when it comes to those positions, especially the line. So I'll try to keep it nice and short. We'll dive right in. We'll start with the quarterbacks. So the Steelers have their 4 quarterbacks. What kind of combination we're going to end up with is going to be really interesting to see. So obviously everything starts at the top. I mean, I could talk for a while with the minutia between, your 4th quarterback and what he does in the summer and then on the practice squad. But obviously the most important thing for this team is figure out who the starting quarterback is going to be. This offseason, the Steelers signed Mitch Trubisky, obviously during free agency, and then they went and drafted Kenny Pickett in the first round of the 2022 NFL draft. Obviously, those two are going to be competing for the starting position, and I think it's going to be fairly close competition. I don't think either one of those players is going to be head and shoulders above the other. I do think that it would take Mitch Trubisky to be head and shoulders above Pickett for him to be the starter. I think we're going to see, as we get reports out of training camp, if both guys are pretty close, pretty even in a lot of ways, I think the nod is going to go to Kenny Pickett to be the starter. It's a tough beginning road when it comes to the schedule. In the first few weeks, you play the Bengals. Tampa Bay is on there early. It's a tough schedule to get started. Cleveland, although we'll see what their quarterback situation is, but another division game. So it's a tough schedule at the beginning of the year. But I honestly believe if the competition is close between those two, we'll see Kenny Pickett get the start, and we'll see the next era of Steelers football get going. That obviously puts Mitch Trubisky as the backup quarterback. He's on a 2-year contract. We'll see. I highly doubt he would end up sticking around for a second year as a backup quarterback. I'm sure he would want to get out, and I'm sure the Steelers would be happy to pay a little bit less for their backup, but his contract isn't that big. They could eat that if they wanted to for the second year with their starter being on a rookie contract. So we'll see what happens there. I do think what we could see happen in terms of Mitch starting is just Kenny gets in and into the summer and the preseason and training camp and everything. And for just whatever reason, he's not adjusting well to the speed of the game. And I think if the Steelers think, hey, he's going to get in there and he's going to get flustered, we're going to start Mitch. But at the same time, I don't think you take a quarterback who that happens to in the first round. Now, if it does and they misevaluate it, then they misevaluated. Don't dig yourself a bigger hole trying to get out. Do what's right by him. Do what's right by the organization. Because if you put him in too early, you could set this franchise back for years and years. And that's something I've actually talked about in some previous videos here on YouTube and on my podcast. So do the right thing, right? Do what's right by him, what's going to help the organization and him best. But you would hope that if you get this guy early, his issue is not going to be ready to play. That was what Pickett was touted as in terms of being NFL ready to play, as close to his ceiling as possible. So we'll just have to see what happens. The biggest thing for him will just be, can he kind of stand tall in the pocket and not do that thing where he drifts back and starts hanging the ball loose? Because if he's going against Cam Hayward a lot in a training camp, I mean, yeah, he probably can't get put on his back too much, but Cam will get after him and push him back and knock that ball out of his hand. So that's where we're going to see if he can clean that up, if he can stay tall in the pocket, go through his progressions and reads and make good throws, then I think he's going to be the starter. Get into the minutia a little bit here at quarterbacks 3 and 4. Mason Rudolph, Chris Oladokun. It's going to be very quiet for those guys in training camp. The Steelers are going to give every opportunity to Pickett and Trubisky to see what they have to make sure they make the right decision in terms of who's going to be the starter. So, Rudolph and Oladokun are not going to get a lot of opportunity to do much. Now, in Rudolph's case, that's just fine because the Steelers have, 4 off seasons of watching Mason Rudolph be, a number 2 or a number 3. And the years he might have even been slotted as a number 3, Ben Roethlisberger was there taking days off, taking half days, stuff like that. So he was getting plenty of reps every offseason in training camp. Steelers know what they have in him. Oladokun as a 7th round pick, it's a flyer, it's a low risk kind of deal. But you want to know what you have, and hopefully, they sent someone to his pro day. They brought him in for an interview. They obviously know him a bit. I think there's a path for him to become a long-term backup for this team. That would be really cool if you see something where you get your starting quarterback and then maybe his career-long backup, his number 2 right there behind him. That would be a really, really cool situation. And you were able to get him in the 7th round. So the path to that happening is, Mason Rudolph, let's say he's going into training camp, going into offseason, entering into the preseason, and what looks like eventually the regular season as the number 3 quarterback. But somewhere out there, another team during their training camp, during preseason, has their backup quarterback go down. And then, while that's happening, their number 3, who they have, it maybe isn't a guy they think this guy can go to games on Sundays and play. We see it all the time. I mean, Josh Dobbs, the Steelers 2-3 years ago now traded him to the Jacksonville Jaguars for a 5th round pick, and then ended up getting Dobbs back the next year anyways. So this happens every once in a while in training camp. Someone's backup quarterback will go down, someone's number 3 will go down, and they need someone to come in and push for a spot or be a steady backup. I think that's best case scenario pretty much for everybody involved. So the Steelers, if they could get at this point even a 7th round pick for Mason Rudolph, now we'll see how desperate that team might be should it happen. But if the Steelers could even get a 7th round pick for Mason, who's going to be the number 3 quarterback of this team, you do it. For the other team, if they are faced with a chance of putting a practice squad level player in as their backup and relying on him week in, week out to go in if you need him to, it's not a great situation. Mason can get you out of a game. He can learn your offense. He can manage. He's not going to be very good, but he's going to at least run something similar to the offense you want to see on the field. Again, it's not going to be very good, but he can get you out of a game. We've seen games where the backup goes in and they can't even throw the ball. It's not a situation you want to be in. And for Mason, I'm sure he's sitting there and he would love to go somewhere else right now. He knows that best case scenario for him, he's the number 3 quarterback on this team. He knows that whatever work he's done in the last, 6 months, 5 months since the team saw him, that he's not really going to get to show that off come training camp. He knows what the number 3 quarterback looks like when the starter is playing a full day in training camp. He's seen it. He's done it. He knows he's not going to get to do a whole lot. Sure, I think he's making $3 million or something this year. Sure, he would love to keep that. He doesn't want to get cut, obviously. So if he has to be the number 3 and make $3 million, he'll do it. But I think in terms of if he really wants a chance to make a career in this league, he'd be willing to go and happy to go somewhere where he's going to be the backup and compete for some playing time. And if that were to happen, if Rudolph were to get traded, then Oladokun becomes your number 3 guy. He makes the 53-man roster. He already has a 4-year contract because of his 7th round selection. As I say that, I question now. I'm pretty sure even the 7th rounders get 4 years. Not guaranteed. I think there's some restricted free agency, something like that in there. But he gets a real contract. He's not on a 1-year bouncing back and forth from the practice squad kind of deal, which is where he'll be if Mason Rudolph stays. Mason Rudolph stays, Oladokun kind of, he gets waived. He has to clear waivers. He has to see if anybody picks him up. If someone claims him, then that's where he has to go. If they don't, he ends up on the practice squad. And then when you're on the practice squad, you just never know what's going to happen. So, and he would lose the contract he got by getting drafted. So obviously for Oladokun, be a good situation to have Rudolph get traded and then slide into the number 3, where he'd be on the roster week in and week out. He would have a consistent job. He would know where he is every day. But for the Steelers, you're not in a position where he's necessarily dressing. The Steelers don't usually dress their third quarterback. So he would be there on the bench, learning, observing, still working with the quarterback group, just not playing. So that's where the quarterback room is. I don't foresee any kind of change happening. I think at this point, it's just who's the starter going to be, and then does Rudolph stick around? And look, if Rudolph sticks around, he's your third quarterback, and he's the guy with the headset and the clipboard, not suited up on game day. He's a guy that's been in this organization, in this offense, and he's contributing. That's well worth it for $3 million. And the quarterback position is so important that, again, if you get through Pickett, you get through Trubisky for whatever reason, those two guys can't play, and Mason's your third string, that's not a bad place to be, but I still maybe would rather have Josh Dobbs. But okay, moving on from the quarterback group, that was enough time spent on those guys. Offensive line. So where's this offensive line at today? Today I'm recording this. It's May 21st. We'll see when this goes up. But right now, I think we're still in the position where from left to right, the starting lineup looks like Dan Moore Jr., Kevin Dodson, Mason Cole, James Daniels, and Chukwuma Okorafor. Dan Moore Jr., I've said before, I'm optimistic about where he's at. I think he had a very good year last year, considering the position he was put in. He was supposed to be the 4th offensive lineman on this team, and similar to the 3rd quarterback, the 4th offensive tackle on this team, and similar to the 3rd quarterback, your 4th tackle is supposed to be on the roster, but not dressing on game days. Again, for how the Steelers do it. It was supposed to be Zach Banner was supposed to be ready to play and starting at right tackle. Okorafor was actually going to be left tackle. Joe Hague was going to be the swing tackle, the backup to both positions. And Dan Moore was going to be the 4th guy, not dressed on game days, but in practice every day with the team on game day, stuff like that. Then things go awry with Banner, and week 1 starting out of the gate is Dan Moore Jr. at left tackle. Clearly not what anybody expected, probably not what he expected. And he had his struggles. I thought he was particularly good in the run game. He's physical, he's athletic. He can move his feet and get into space. I like him on the screen games. I think he can get out wide and still make contact with the defender pretty well. So I really like that aspect of his game. And I thought his pass pro got a lot better as the season went along. So I have high hopes for him for sure. Next to him, Kevin Dodson. I don't know where I stand on Kevin Dodson. I think I like the idea of Kevin Dodson more than I like possibly who he actually at least has shown to be. I still think he can be very good, and I just think he hasn't had a lot of consistency to show that yet. You think back to his rookie year, and he played, I think, 5 games. Let me look at this real quick. Or started 5 games, I should say. Oh, wrong one. But obviously, so his rookie year, he gets drafted in the 4th round. He ends up playing a couple times for De Castro, a couple times for Filer. He played on the left and the right side at various times. So let's see. Kevin Dodson, 4 starts. So I think he had like 3 at right guard and 1 at left guard or something like that. And then last year he played about 9 games before he had that bad ankle injury and then was out for the rest of the season. So we just haven't seen enough of him yet. He hasn't had 1 full year of starts under his belt. We don't know even if left guard or right guard is his best position at this point. But a guy that should bring a lot in the run game, very physical, can really get a good push. That Louisiana Lafayette line has produced some nice run-oriented offensive linemen. Should be able to pull in either direction, moves his feet really well, keeps his feet moving in pass pro. So a guy that should have been really the best offensive lineman on the team this year. Some inconsistency, not only in his play, but he was sandwiched between 2 rookies, including Kendrick Green, who obviously had a really tough year, especially, and then the aforementioned Dan Moore, who had a tough year at the beginning of the year. So we just don't really know what we have in Dodson yet. Like I said, I would like to think that he's going to be very good. I would like to think he might even be a Pro Bowl caliber type of player. but it's just so unclear at this point. But I think you can still kind of essentially pen him into one of the starting guard spots. Mason Cole, center, is next. Signed him from the Vikings, kind of a journeyman. Was on the St. Louis Cardinals, was on the Cardinals, the Arizona Cardinals team for a couple of years. Started a couple of years at center for them there in his first and third seasons in the NFL. Rodney Hudson comes in, they trade him to Minnesota Vikings. He deals with some injuries, he has some spot starts. As long as he keeps his feet moving in pass pro, he's okay, but he is pretty light, especially at guard, so which is where he played mostly with the Vikings. So hopefully a move back to center for the Steelers. Keeps his feet moving. I think you can use his length as better leverage than Kendrick Green. And I think overall it should be a little bit better. I still don't think it's going to be great. I mean, this isn't the next, Marquise Pouncey. This isn't the next, center for your next 5 years. But if his 2 years here, it can be 1 year solid start. Maybe next year it's, you bring in another rookie and they compete and he's a good, swing backup, then great. But that's where he's at center. James Daniels, I'm gonna have a deeper tape breakdown of him some point later, I think. But he's supposed to be coming in as the top offensive lineman on this team. Physical, long, nasty, skilled, good feet, good hands, all of that. He has all the traits. But of course, similar to this next guy I'll talk about, he was the best offensive lineman on a bad offensive line last year. So where does that really net? Where is he really going to compare to this group? Not sure yet, but again, it was nice to see, a little bit bigger of a name get brought into this team because, it doesn't normally happen. And especially considering it's, at a position of need where, they very late in the offseason last year had to make up for DeCastro by signing Trey Turner off the street. It's nice to see a young, talented player get brought in for pretty decent money to kind of fill that role. So let's see where he ranked last year. I'm going to pull up PFF's offensive line grades. I don't always love these, but it is kind of a good checkpoint, I think. So he was graded out. They were the 22 ranked offensive line. I think you could say they were even probably worse than that. But he ranked out at a 71.8. So, okay, average. Now, again, offensive line is so much about the team. And next to him, he had Larry Borum, who got a 61.4, and Sam Mustafer, who got a 51.8. So he's obviously dealing with some struggling players on either side of him. Hopefully, he can come in here to Pittsburgh and see, maybe a little bit better of a center, Mason Cole, and this next guy, a very solid right tackle and a core for on his right, and have a good season. So Chuks came back. He signed a 3-year deal. Again, don't worry so much about that. It's fairly easy to get out of, I'm pretty sure, after this year. But a guy that, if he's your fifth best offensive lineman, you're in really good shape. If he's your best offensive lineman, like he was last year for the Steelers, you're in a lot of trouble. So hopefully somewhere this year he falls somewhere in the middle. I mean, theoretically, James Daniels, Kevin Dodson, and Dan Moore could all be better than him even this year. If he's even, third on this list, it's still a much better team than it was last year, where he was your best offensive lineman weeks 1 through 17 or 1 through 18. So that is still what I think will be the starting group. You have to think there's probably going to be 4 guys that come in behind them in terms of being on the 53-man roster, but there are, I think, 10 other offensive linemen on the roster as of right now. So I'll just go through them real quick, one by one. You have Kendrick Green, last year's 3rd-round pick, starting center, only played guard in college, really. Had a very tough transition to both the NFL and the position. Some trouble with snaps, timing, adjustments at the line, adjustments with balance, adjustments with NFL size and speed, ended up on the ground a lot. The list goes on and on. Obviously, he just struggled all the way around. I think he's going to still have a chance to compete for the center job, but I think Mason Cole's going to end up winning that. And if Green is your backup swing interior lineman, I think you're in good shape. That's not a bad place to be. But I fully expect him to be on the roster. I don't think they'll give up on him after 1 year. So I fully expect him to be on the roster and competing for a spot. And we'll see. Maybe he even competes at guard. Like I said, Kevin Dotson's very theoretical at this time. So maybe those two get in a competition for guard. If you end up with Green winning that, I think that's pretty bad shape. But again, we'll have to see. And James Daniels played center in college. So there's a world where maybe Daniels plays center and Green is better than Cole at guard. So we'll just have to see. I think he's going to have every opportunity, but I don't think he'll end up winning a starting position. JC Hassenauer is back on this team. Third center. So it just depends how much you feel like you need that third center on the active roster. I'm not sure where the practice squad limitations are at this time. So if he doesn't make the 53, then I think you could see him get waived and maybe circle back to the practice squad unless someone needs a backup center. John LeGlue, kind of a nice surprise from last year. Played mostly tackle during camp, but started playing some guard, and that's where he ended up getting some snaps on the 53 last year during the regular season. And I think he even did some practice as a long snapper. I'm sure he's been practicing some center work this offseason. I think if he's your ninth guy where he can play 4 positions on the offensive line, that's not a bad place to be. He showed a lot of, toughness, a lot of physicality, a lot of hustle. He was constantly running 10, 12 yards downfield on every run play. You would like him to be, down at the line of scrimmage because he just pancakes someone, but whatever, that's all right. Can't do that all the time. So he'll have another opportunity to compete for a spot this year. Joe Hague, I mentioned before, I think he's in the second year of his contract. I think he'll be back in as a swing tackle. He had some nice snaps at right tackle, but also another guy that can play guard, which is nice when you have those position flexible guys on your bench. And then Trent Scott, the newly signed Trent Scott, I think he's been on 2 teams with Pat Meyer, the offensive line coach previously. So it seems he just kind of follows him around. Guy that has experience at both tackle and guard spots. Pretty much you really only ever want to see him at right tackle though, and you really don't want to see that. But I think if he's your 4th tackle, where he's the guy that's not dressed on game days, but he's a good guy to have in the locker room at practice with this offensive line group because he knows how coach likes to do things, then I think that's where you're at with him. Chaz Greene, who was this team's 4th tackle last year, for the most part with Zach Banner being out. I don't think he'll circle back, but he's circled back around to this team a couple times, so we'll see. He's a swing tackle, as I mentioned, though, so we'll see if he ends up kind of on the practice squad. And then 4 other names that are kind of interesting practice squad candidates, guys I don't really expect to make it onto the 53. But you have Jordan Tucker, who is the offensive tackle out of UNC. So we'll see. He was one of the first UDFAs that they signed. So we'll see if they, keep him around or maybe have him compete with, maybe even a Trent Scott, but probably a practice squad guy who needs some development. Jake Dixon, another UDFA from this year, as well as Chris Owens. Jake Dixon, I believe, is a tackle. I don't know if he has any guard experience. Chris Owens, I believe, was the center at Alabama, but he's an interior guy, a little undersized as well. And then Nate Gilliam, who was a practice squad holdover the Steelers signed to the practice squad last year, brought him back around for this offseason. So we'll see what happens there. But those 4 names, those are guys that'll be competing for spots on the practice squad, maybe a call up every once in a while, but not anybody that's really competing for the 53. So when it comes to assessing the starting lineup in the 53, like I said, I gave you my left to right. I think it's better than last year. I don't necessarily think it's good. I think the optimal level of this is a good offensive line where Dan Moore makes his second year leap. Dodson in his first full season is the player that we expected. James Daniels kind of takes off being in a better environment. A core 4 is still just your solid, guy, but if he can be your number 4, that's great. And then if Mason Cole is even an improvement on Kendrick Green, I think you feel really good about that signing. And then you got Kendrick Green, John LeGlue as your kind of swing interior guys. Joe Hague is a solid swing tackle. And then, let's say it's either Trent Scott or JC Hassenauer kind of competing for that 9th spot in terms of what's a better value. Your 4th tackle, even though John LeGlue could technically be that with right tackle experience, not so much left tackle? Or would you rather have a third center in that 9 spot in JC Hassenauer, who gave you some good snaps at center, but pretty much only want to see him at center only. So that's the standing of the offensive line right now. That's the standing of the offensive line and the quarterback right now. Your thoughts, I would love to hear and see. So make sure you hit the comment section below with just the guys maybe you're excited about, or the surprise guys that you maybe want to see, or if you have a hot take on who should be cut, something like that. I would definitely love to see that and start a conversation respectfully, hopefully. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. A couple other places you can check our stuff out. So this is Sports and Money Pro Football GM. Go back through the archives. We have stuff on the Steelers, the NFL as a whole. We did a lot of draft work. There's some team experts from some other sites, so be sure to check that out. You can check out my work written on phantomsportsofficial.com. Ben is also all over. Ben Parker, the person who runs this YouTube channel, is also all over the Phantom Sports YouTube channel. So check that out. Like and subscribe to all these channels and get on that website and check it out. You can also take a look at my podcast, the Simon Shortt podcast on Apple and Spotify. I have a lot of football stuff on there. Here in the off season, though, I'm also starting to do some other things. So WNBA, some movie reviews, comic book things, fandom, maybe getting into Star Wars here in a little bit. We have the Obi-Wan show coming out next week. So some different stuff in the off season, but I'll be back doing football full time here in the fall. So be sure to take a look, check this, or enjoy this video. Take a look, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and be on the lookout because I'll have more videos like this on the other position group soon. So thank you so much, guys. Have a good one. Bye.